So we now want to look at specifically styling the sign up button in the navigation. In the last part we looked at actually creating the unordered list, adding the list items, styling the anchors within that except the button. Now we're going to go on and create a whole new section in our custom style sheet and dedicate that to buttons. Now the reason I say that is because they're going to be other buttons on the page at some point, not within the scope of this series, but there will be buttons on the page, so you want to kind of keep with the flow of styling buttons individually. So let's go over to our text editor and create a new section down here to specifically deal with buttons. So we're not targeting the button in the navigation, we're only targeting the buttons that we want to create. So I'm going to create a comment here that says buttons. For button, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the padding and the border radius. So when I refresh, let's just go ahead and look. This looks a little bit too big. We're not measuring exactly again, but we want to go ahead and change the padding here. Let's go ahead and change the padding to something like 5 pixels for the top and bottom and 30 pixels for the left and right. And let's give this a border radius of 5 pixels. Now there are hooks in Foundation that allow you to add classes like at the border radius, but we're just going to sort of overwrite that in terms of the primary button here. Okay, so you'll now see that we've got a button which looks a little bit flat. So let's go and look at how we can, perhaps change this. Now, if I was to go ahead and change the padding here to a higher number, let's say about 14 is probably okay. So let's go ahead and add that back into the style sheet. So there we are, and we want to go ahead and specifically style button primary. And also we want to target primary hover, but we'll look at that in a moment. So we're going to set the background to something. So let's go ahead over to Photoshop and just go ahead and color pick this, and that's 3A, 3A, 3A. So we can go ahead and over in our text editor go ahead and add this in here. So what we also want to do is maintain that the color stays white. So in this case we'll just change that to white. So when I refresh now, we've got a black button that's starting to look a lot, more like the design. However, when we hover over, we get this blue effect here, and we get this transition as well. Now the transitions that you see at fading come as part of Foundation, but what we're going to do is just ignore that, and we're going to say button primary hover. So we've duplicated the style of the selectors here for these two styles, which now mean that when we hover, nothing is actually going to happen. The color isn't going to change. We still get the cursor to signify that this is a link, which is good, but nothing else happens to it. So that's basically the buttons that we are going to look at. Really, I mean, that's just the header button. Like I said, we could have targeted this within the header, but if we want to use the same style button again, now what's going to happen is we've already got the classes that we need to do that, so we don't need to keep targeting a button within a specific area and applying these specific styles to it. We could use this button anywhere we like and it would look exactly the same. So that's the button, and that completes the navigation and the header. So now what we're going to do is move on to the feature section that you see under here. Let's just look at that in the design. So all we're going to need to do now is create this big text here and this image here. So we'll have to cut this image out as well.